Okay. Last week we spoke on the fact that belief and faith, they're not exactly equivalent terms in the scriptures. Now, this could be a little heavy to understand how some of this stuff works, because in the scriptures you see a lot of times it says, your faith has made you well. And sometimes it'll say, this happened because they believed, or this didn't happen because they didn't believe. In those things, it kind of leads someone to kind of grab that faith and believing is all intertwined as the same thing. However, faith is a lot different than just faith. I mean, faith is just a lot different than just believing. Of course, you need believing, as we were talking about last week. You need believing. You need to believe in order to come to the area that the individual receives faith. But today, what I wanted to look at is just how this faith comes about and how this faith is gifted to another individual through, like for instance, Yahshua received something and Yahshua was able to give this to somebody else. And the other person that he gave this gift to didn't necessarily do everything in the universe that was right, but they believed in the individual having a certain power, and having that, they were able to become receptive to what he was given, because he had the power at that time to give a gift. Okay, now if we're not receptive, we don't receive anything, because if we don't believe something in that manner, because we could doubt in that manner. If we doubt in that manner, then we are not receptive. And then, okay, the lack of receptivity, it doesn't support whatever that individual is giving. So, what I want to do today, I want to look at a couple of scriptures. First, let's go to Ephesians chapter 2. Okay, we went there last week also. Ephesians chapter 2, and we're just going to look at that, and then we're going to look at what Yahshua had. So Ephesians chapter 2, let's look at verse 8. Let's start at verse 8. And in this book right here, it says, for indeed, by undeserved pardon, but this is the grace that they're talking about, you will be saved through faith. Okay? So you're going to be saved through faith. But this does not come out of you. So this faith that is talking about, it does not come out of you. It is a gift of Yahweh. Now, if you receive this gift of Yahweh, you could give it to somebody if that person becomes receptive to you, to what you're saying. Remember, you have to believe something, but you don't have to believe in what the individual that Yahweh has put before you is saying. You could believe something else, that some guy tell you to, let's go rob the National Bank of First America, okay? And we could get away with it by doing this, that, and you could believe into that thing. That's also believing. But to believe into what your Father in heaven has told you to believe into, this is coming to the place that now it's going to cause faith, after you start believing in that and start living according to that belief, okay, system, and doing what he says to do, that is going to grant something else to the individual, so that individual has more. Okay, so here it says now, so this is not, it's not yours. Yet not outside the works of faith, so that no one can boast. So none of us could say, I did. So Yahweh's not giving it over like that. Now we're going to look at Yahshua. Just look at Yahshua's life and all that Yahshua came in to do. We're going to take a little look at that. Right now we're going to look at Isaiah 42. We're going to go to some of the prophecies and show what Yahshua came in with. And when Yahshua was dealing with somebody, he says, your faith has made you whole. It wasn't that the individual was doing everything already, but that individual believed. They were convinced that Yahshua was something special. Now, if you go back and look, Abraham didn't do everything that was proper. Okay? But nevertheless, the fact that he believed Yahweh and did what Yahweh said to do, this is actually what gave him the power to do certain things. Now, nobody was. If you go back and look at it, nobody was 100% doing the right thing. Abraham was amongst a whole bunch of individuals who actually worshipped the Anunnakis, if you will. They call the Anakim, the gods of those guys who were the gods. Okay? Molech, Anu, all those guys, that's where they came from. He came out of that land of Ur. And they had been around there for a long time. And folks were sacrificing their children to Molech back then. This is the reason why Yahweh was able to say to Moshe, not to Moshe, to Abraham, okay, let me see if you're going to give me your firstborn and not Molech. And tested him to see if he's going to move on to Yahweh in that manner. But Yahweh doesn't want your child. He wants you. He doesn't want you to kill your child. He wants you and I to believe in what he's saying so we could help assist in that plan of redemption. That's what he wants. And this is where it came with Abraham. Abraham was now going to be the father of Israel's whole faith. That's why it says, okay, when so-and-so died, he went and rested in the bosom of Abraham. But he wasn't necessarily in Abraham's bosom. This was just the reference point that they were using, that this is what Yahweh used to bring everyone to him, was kind of through Abraham. Now, someone was going to come in, and this individual that was going to come in, this individual had to have a certain power. He was going to receive a certain power. And the power that this individual had is something that we all lost. So while that thing that we lost was on the planet, it was an anchor. And anything that believed in that power that the individual had and was receptive to it, he could give that person the gift. The gift. Okay? Whatever that person's faith was as connecting to the individual who now had this power, they were able to receive anything because they were receptive in that area. Now Yahshua went about, and Yahshua couldn't do a lot of things. And the fact that he couldn't do, the reason why he couldn't do a lot of things is because no one was receptive to what he had to give. A gift is a gift. If y'all don't receive that gift, I can't get it. Okay? So in chapter 42 here of Isaiah, we're going to look at Yahshua, what Isaiah said about Yahshua and what Yahshua actually had when he actually came into on the planet. It says, "Behold, my servant, whom I uphold, my elect one, in whom my soul delights. I have," or some scripture says, "I will." Okay, this book says "I have," but it's not a really big deal. Some books say "I will." Okay, "I will put my spirit upon him." So he's not having the spirit all along. He's going to get the spirit, but here this book is speaking in, as well. This has already happened. Okay, speaking something that as if it had already happened. This is by the faith. This is by faith. This is like speaking something into being. Okay, so to say I have given it to him, that ain't no big deal. But because if we could understand that, hey, all things are happening on a certain level, all right now. There is no there's no time and space limitations on a certain plane. It's just all right now. So if you think about it like this book is not necessarily saying something wrong. However, if we think about it in the fact of where space and time comes as a factor, where we live in this dimension, then you have to go with "I will." Okay, so he says, "I will put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth judgment to the Gentiles, or to the nations," if you will say. Okay? So here goes, a spirit is going to be upon him. Something is going to happen. Now let's go over to Matthew chapter 3. Now Yahshua was born, came through the portal of woman, and he grew up. At one time they were changing his diapers like you do any baby today. Okay? He was learning how to speak. He didn't come up just doing everything right. And he went to school and he learned, and he believed. He started doing certain things to cleanse himself, and based upon that, he received a great gift, and this led him in his life to where he was. Now, in chapter 3 here, let's go to verse 16. Chapter 3. It says here, and Joshua, when he was baptized, immediately went out of the water, and lo, the heavens were opened to him. And he perceived the Spirit. Now the Spirit that Isaiah said was going to be upon this individual, now he perceived this descending and entering into him. This is by perception, but he had already believed that he was someone special. He had already believed that. He had already done certain things that his life would be in a certain area, that he would be receptive to the Spirit. Okay? And then here comes a gift, the Spirit coming on him. Then it says here, then lo, a voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved Son. This is the very same Son that we were disconnected from. Now, here we come. This individual is receiving this particular Spirit. Now, if he has this, then what's going to be working out of him? What's going to be working out of him is that very same Spirit. Because that's what he's going to emanate. That's what he's going to express. Okay? Because that's possessing that individual at that point. Now, let's go to Luke. Now, he received this, and Yahweh showed him by revelation what's going on. And then let's go to Luke chapter 4 and look at verse 16. Okay? Let's look at verse 16 first. And in verse 16, it says, then he went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. And he stood up in order to read, because this is the custom. They would go in, it's kind of like the Mormons, okay? They go in and someone is chosen to read a certain passage. And usually how they would do it, they would open the book and simply just put their hands down and read a certain passage off the book. So it's anywhere. You didn't have to say, okay, well, I'm going to be reading this one or that one. They got up there, they opened the book, and they read a certain part of it. Okay. So Joshua did this on the Sabbath day. So he opened the book here, okay, and he was going to be the one that was going to read that Sabbath. And handed to him was the book of the prophet Isaiah. It was handed to him for him to open up. When he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of Yahweh is upon me, just as Isaiah had said it was going to be on him, right? So now, the Spirit of Yahweh is upon me because he has anointed, put on me, poured on me, something is on me. He has anointed me to preach the glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to preach the acceptable year of Yahweh. And then he closed the book. Now, this was supposed to be what he turned to and just read. And when he read that now, everybody was like, what is going on here? Okay, this guy just got done reading this particular scripture. And then he said to them, this day, this scripture, today, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. That's what he said at the time. This is something that has just taken place in your ears. And all could attest to his speech, but were amazed that such beautiful words as this what this individual was bringing out. He was saying, because they all know the scriptures. They all know the scriptures. But this individual turned to that, read that, and said, today, this is what's in front of you. Now, Yahshua had read Isaiah chapter 42, and he believed this to be him. Okay? This is something that he was generating. This was his responsibility to generate this belief within himself. Now, as he generated this belief within himself, that belief led him to move in an area that he was going to seek his Father through all kind of stuff. And he was given something more and more and more until it came to the point that he was going to be receptive of the Word itself, the only begotten Son itself. Now he received this, and he told the people, now, this is happening before you today. But a lot of people didn't believe this. It's not something that they believed. So they weren't about to be receptive to whatever he was saying, or just anything that he was saying. Now, let's go to let's go to Matthew. Let's go back to Matthew and look at the apostles now. These apostles just wasn't following something that was a heebie-jeebie. That wasn't the deal. They saw themselves. Look in chapter 17 in verse 5. Now Yahshua had led these men in meditation, and they actually he had brought them to another state of consciousness, and they were seeing things. Now, it says here, this is Kepha, I believe. While he spoke, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, there was a voice out of the cloud, which said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. The Spirit, just as Isaiah said, something was going to be on this individual. That individual went and got baptized, and he saw this thing coming in him. He told the people that, hey, this is what his Father has anointed him, has put something upon him, which is that same Spirit, the only begotten, the Spirit of the only begotten Son, to do something. And now, as he led the apostles, or some of the apostles, in this meditation, and they moved to the area of this mount, they call it the mountain of transfiguration, they were hearing this voice. They were hearing this. Now, Kepha goes on now to tell you that, hey, their faith is not something that is just coming flying by night. If you go over to Kepha, 2 Kepha chapter 2, he's going to attest to this. Okay? So chapter 2, 2 Kepha chapter 1, let's look at verse 16. So he says here, for we have not believed cunningly. This isn't a fly-by-night thing here. We have not believed cunningly devised fables to entrap you, to get you to believe something that is going to lead you further away from your redemption. That's not what we receive. When we made known to you the power and coming of our King, Yahshua Messiah, or the one who has been anointed, something has been put on him to lead you to salvation, Yahweh's salvation. But were eyewitnesses of his majesty, because they were around him, for he received from Yahweh the Father honor and glory at a certain time. He received this. This is the gift he received. And in this was the great power of faith to do a whole bunch of stuff. When there came such a voice to him from the excellent glory, this is my beloved Son, whom I am well pleased. This is when he received this. It just told us that. He received this. And this voice, which was brought from heaven, we heard it when we went on the mountain of transfiguration. When he led us there, we heard it, being with him on the holy mountain. We also heard this. So this ain't a fly-by-night thing we're trying to tell you here. We're trying to tell you something that should ignite your belief system, which is your responsibility in believing it, just to get on the path, believing this, Now, if you believing, now, dear, we're going to be receptive to whatever is going on. If we're believing, we're going to be receptive to this great power. Now, believing don't mean that you got to be doing every single thing that is correct. No, it's getting on the path. Okay? But see, when you believe in something and someone else, such as Yahshua, is in the same mode, and that individual has a certain power, and Yahshua is not the only one that could receive that guy, but he did have that, and he has the power at that time to give you something, and you have faith. Now you have faith in whatever is going on here. It's not just to believe. You have believed this, and there's a certain conduct that you are going to hold just because of what you believe. You're not going to do X, Y, Z instead of ABC because what you believe in doesn't allow you to do X, Y, Z. You're going to do something that your belief system is going to direct you to. In a lot of cases, people believe what Yahshua said, and as he moved around the nation or the different cities that he was moving through, they believed this man had something in them to help, in him to help them. They believed this, and their code of conduct was to follow this man and get some of it, whatever it was. Abraham did the same thing. Abraham believed Yahweh. That's why he left his nation and his people, and he went on this long journey. Simply because Yahweh said, if you do this, I'm going to give you this. He wasn't performing a whole bunch of all kind of stuff. He simply believed that and started doing what that energy said to do. And that was accounted to him as righteousness. But he hadn't done everything that Moshe had the children of Israel doing. He didn't do that. No. So when Moshe came now, Moshe said, listen, this will be our righteousness. And in this being our righteousness, if you agree with this, I'm going to get the elementals to come and function in our realm, and we're agreeing as a unit that we're not just going to go about doing whatever we want to do in our own eyes, but we're going to function as a unit. And if we go outside of this, then we have erred. And we're saying this all in front of everyone, and we're consenting to each other right here, with each other right here, and to the spirits above that he had brought into the equation through the sprinkling of blood. That's what he did. Okay? People do it today, guys. It's not necessarily called what Moshe did, but that very same art is in what they call voodoo or obia, or what some of the elites now are doing with blood. They are attracting certain energies with blood. Now the only difference is when Moshe was doing certain things, Moshe had a positive direction that he was going in, and he wouldn't even do anything with blood or killing the animals. But the children of Israel wasn't going to go any further. So that's where, because of where the people were, it led him to have to do it, reach them where they were at. Because they weren't going to come out of that. When they went around the Egyptians said, no, we can't have these people around us because they sacrifice animals, and that's an abomination to us. They got to go live in Goshen. So they set them off, and that's where they lived. Now, just because Moshe came, doesn't mean that they gave that up. No, they still sacrificed animals. That's what they did. Well, so when Moshe came and Moshe was trying to direct these people out, they weren't about to go any further than that. They weren't about to go any further than that. And that's how Israel came up as a nation. And Moshe had to get elementals now, because Yahweh showed them how to do this, to protect the children of Israel as they moved about to come to the place that they will be the ones who were used, or in their faith, they were going to be used to show the nations how to come to the place of redemption. That's how he was going to be used. But Moshe told them that somebody else was coming, and that a spirit of Yahweh was going to be upon that individual. And the same thing that these apostles heard, that's what Moshe said. Moshe said, this is the one that you are to listen to. Do whatever he says, that is what you are to do. So Yahshua was in here and he had received something. Now we're going to go back over to Matthew real quickly now. And we're going to see there's a little something that's different with just Yahshua being here and having that power in him. Because he didn't go about needing certain things to be done, because he had this great generation or generation of the spirit that was within him. It was just generating all this energy for him to use, because it was in him. In Matthew, let's go over to 9, chapter 9. Okay. So he goes now. There were certain customs that were done, and people were looking at things in a certain manner. In chapter 9, look at verse 14. Right? It says the question about Yahshua's disciples. It says, then the disciples of Yachanan came to Yahshua and asked, why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? Because Yahshua hadn't had his disciples fast. Now this is the deal here now, guys. It's not that he didn't have them do it at all, but in this training area that he was with them at this point, he wasn't having them do all this. Okay, so these guys are wondering, okay, fasting is supposed to give you this great power. It's supposed to draw you closer to certain things that Yahweh has to give you. So if now, if fasting does all these things and draw the spirit closer to you and draw you closer to the spirit, and we're doing it, and you're supposed to be in a certain area, okay, and you have all these followings and you're doing all these mighty things here, why don't your apostles do this? Why don't your disciples do this? So here is Yahshua now. Yahshua is going to answer him. And Yahshua said to him, can the children of the bridal chamber mourn, as long as the bridegroom is with them? That means it's the time of their joy. Why are they going to afflict themselves when it's time for their joy? The bridegroom is there, which is the only begotten Son. Okay, the Christ, Messiah, whatever. Okay. But the day will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them. At that time they will fast. But right now, it's here. They're plugging into that now. Why would they mourn to get something that is right there with them? They don't need to plug into that. It's there. They don't need to fast and afflict their souls to receive something that's right there. It's right. It's in that man, and if they're receptive to that man, they're receiving it all along. It's like an open pipe, open conduit. He goes, no man put a piece of new cloth onto old garments, for the new patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. He's simply comparing what he has to what is the tradition or what Israel is known to do and what he has right now. So you're not going to put them together because they're not going to work together. Because when the new stuff comes, people who are used to the old stuff, they can't handle it. That's why Israel wouldn't move away from animal sacrifices, and that's why Moshe had to come down to their level. This is why when Moshe came off the mountain and his face was shining, they wouldn't come to him during that time, because it was going to be worse if he was going to force that upon them, because he would lose the whole congregation. They were going. So he had to tone it down. He had to bring it in that area. Neither do men put new wine into old wineskins, because as the new wine is working itself, it's going to burst the old wineskin, because the old wineskin already got worked by another wine when it was new. Okay? And now all the fermentation and stuff that was moving in that, it already happened for that wine skin, and that's where it's at. You put new stuff into it now, it's going to work that one even more. And you're going to lose it. Or else the wineskin will burst. Okay? The wine will be then poured out, it will just be gone, and the wineskin's destroyed. The container that holds this wine or holds this spirit is going to be destroyed. We don't want that. But new wine is put into new wineskins, and if it's done that way, both of them are preserved. So I know how I'm teaching my apostles here, disciples, or my apostles. I know how I'm training them, and I can't have them in this area of the traditions that has come down if I'm going to put what is here in me in them now. It's hard enough right now because they're not believing everything and they're simply being trained. So they have to get a new spirit about them right now. And that's what I'm putting inside of them. I'm preparing that so that they could be receptive to this. Okay, so now, what I'm trying to get to is that there's a distinction between this just believing and having faith, and want you to see that when Yahshua was on this planet, and not just Yahshua, but anyone who could receive this portion of the faith that Yahweh, or faith, okay, that which Yahweh had to give, the power. Anyone who can receive this, if they receive it and they're receptive to it, well, what will stop them from giving it to somebody else? Even if that person was weak and couldn't really generate it all on their own, if they would believe in what you were saying, whatever you were saying and whatever you had the power to do, it would give them a boost. And how would they be healed in whatever they're doing? If that's what you are doing, is healing them, they would be healed by their faith. Their faith being able to connect with what you are able to give. But if they they did not believe and didn't receive the power to have faith or to be receptive to that, they couldn't receive what you were given. Okay? So now we have, it said in the scriptures, the prayer of the righteous man availeth much. Because that individual believes, he has a code of conduct, that's why he's called righteous. And that's what his prayer is going to prevail. Now, when he prays, he may be praying for someone who is not strong in the faith and who something has come upon. But that which he has within himself, just like Yahshua, he's able to gift it to someone whose faith is not as strong. And if that individual has faith also and is receptive to what the other individual has, it's like a battery that is kind of low in a vehicle and another vehicle who is fully charged. You put those cables on and all of a sudden you're able to jump start the other guy. It's just energy. It's the movement of energy. Okay? Now you need the cable for this because this is remote. It's remotely done by the faith, by you first believing in something, okay? Believing that thing is real and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get something, to get the power of Yahweh moving in you. And if you don't have it all that much right now, but someone else does and you're receptive to that, that person is able to gift you, just as Yahshua was able to gift others. But they first had to believe unto him, because we could believe unto anything. Okay, so here's the believing part now. Let's go over to James chapter 2. We could believe unto anything. Okay, so James or Yaakov okay, Yaakov 2. That's James. Yaakov 2. James 2. And look at verse 19. Now, you're going to see that you can believe into anything. You don't have to believe into what Yahweh is saying. And whatever you believe into, that's where we're going to be moving towards. Okay, chapter 2 and verse 19. It says here, you believe that there is one Father. You do well. The demons also believe and tremble. So the belief in what the demons are having right now is not giving them the faith of Yahweh to work on that level. Or they wouldn't be trembling. They're moving in a whole different direction. This is why they are trembling. Okay, let's go to John chapter 10. John chapter 10. And look at verse 37. 10 verse 37. He said, if I do not do the works of my Father, do not believe me. If I don't do the works of my Father, don't believe me. Now this is just the belief part. So you could believe if someone else is doing something else, you could also believe in that individual, but it won't be unto what Yahweh is saying. However, if someone comes along doing what the works of Yahweh, and they're showing you something, well, that's for you to get something generating in you to believe, at least where that individual is directing you to, and until that individual show you something different, that it's not from Yahweh. Okay, now you don't have to believe so you make that man your God or whatever the case is, or, oh, he's all about this. No, Yahweh is directing you to come to him. He used different people to show you how to come to him. But at any time, any one of those individuals could actually get caught up into something that you can't see, or Yahweh is not saying, and at that point, Yahweh wants you to step somewhere else. Now, it's not talking about if something, you don't see something in the scriptures, but whatever the individual is showing you is not against the scriptures. That's different. That's going to be helping you to believe onto something, but it doesn't have to be something that is in the scriptures, because not everything is in the scriptures. When Yahshua came along, he was showing everybody what's going on, okay, what he knew. Much of what he was showing them was not in the scriptures. As a matter of fact, he was telling these guys, hey, I got stuff I could tell you, but it will mess your faith up. And one of the reasons why it will mess your faith up because you can't see it in the scriptures. It's not there. Okay? Or it may be there, but it's very hard for you to see it. So in verse 37 here now. So if I don't do what my Father says to do, hey, don't believe me. But if I do perform the works of my Father, though you do not believe me, don't worry about the individual to take him and put him on a pedestal. Believe in what is being brought out. Okay. Believe the works. Believe what the individual has said. Believe what he does around you, what you have seen. Don't worry about if you believe him or not. Believe those things. Are those things what your Father said a righteous man does and what you need to do? So that, now, this is the important part now. So he says, believe this so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I in him. Notice what it's saying here, guys. If you believe in the first place, then something is going to be happening later on that they may understand and know that Yahweh is in me. If you don't believe, you can't receive this understanding. That's what he's saying to them. If you don't believe this, there is no way for you to know or receive the understanding that I am with my Father has sent me, I'm in him, he is within me. No. If you don't believe me, this is what's going to happen. Because of this, verse 39, they again sought to arrest him, but he escaped from their hands. Why? Because they weren't believing unto what he was saying. So whatever he was saying, they could not receive it. They could not receive it. Okay, now we're going to go to Acts. Acts chapter 8. Okay? Acts chapter 8, and let's look at verse 12. 12. Okay, so notice here verse 12. Let's go to verse 11. Okay? So there was a guy named Simon, I think it was Simon Magus, and he was moving around, doing a lot of things, and it wouldn't be like those things were necessarily bad, but what he was doing, he was trying to get the people all stuck on him. So he would go around almost like a magic show. Yahshua went around doing certain things, but Yahshua was always giving credit to Yahweh. This guy was actually pulling people towards him. This was kind of like the serpent was doing early on in the garden. So in verse 11 here now, it says, and they followed him because he had astonished them with his sorceries for a long time. They followed him. So they were believing unto something that was not necessarily going to direct them onto redemption. They were believing into this individual, and this individual could have directed them off any kind of way, because people, when they see someone start doing things, oh man, this is powerful, they start chasing that. So here was Simon Magus. Now, I believe it's Simon Magus. Okay, so anyway, verse 12. But when they believed Philip, this is somebody else, Philip came along, speaking whatever, and saying whatever he has to say, as he proclaimed the things concerning the kingdom of Yahweh and the name of Yahshua Messiah, those who were believing in Simon, they were baptized, both men and women. Now this time they're baptized, right? Then Simon himself also believed. He had all this, he was directing these guys in a certain manner. He also believed. And after he was baptized, now he's going to leave the belief system that he had. He's going to kind of get, because he was not immersed into something else, he's going to move with the children. He was with Philip continually, and he was seeing things, and was amazed when he saw the acts of power and signs which was done, because even more than he was doing was happening here. That's the only reason he could have been amazed. So something, he could believe into something different, and it was going to direct him from whatever he was doing with all the sorceries and stuff like that. It was going to direct him in a different area. So there's a belief system here. Simon had believed one thing, but it wasn't necessarily the thing. Now Simon is believing a different thing. So believing is very, very important, but we have to believe onto that which is going to be directed, or that which is directed by Yahweh. Now, you have to meet them where they are. Okay? So we're going to go to Romans now. You got to, just as Moshe and Shaul did, they met the people where they were. Okay. In chapter 14 of Romans, listen to verse 1. It says, accept one who is weak in the faith. Okay? Or accept one whose faith is weak. Now if it says the faith, we don't want to get caught up too much on the faith and faith, because the faith is a code of conduct that you participate in, that gives you faith, that gives you the power, allows you to have the power that comes from Yahweh. But believing is also what you receive. Okay, that you generate this belief system, and based on this belief system, you move into this code of conduct in order for you to receive a gift. Now, this code of conduct may just be, hey man, this guy is moving around here and he's helping people, he's healing the sick, whatever. I have this ailment in my hip. I know that he could do this, and that's me acting upon what I believe here now, and this is the code that I'm going to be moving on to receive something from him, which my faith is too weak to receive for myself. So I want to receive something from him. So now he's saying, accept one who is weak in, this one says in the faith, but it's really talking about accept one whose faith is weak. Accept it. Now, if they want to move off and do some crazy stuff, well, that's a little different. But now, and this is what this book right here is implying, but it's not necessarily so. And as you read down further, you'll see why it's not necessarily so. So it says here, accept one who is weak in the faith. But it says, but not if he wants to argue or dispute. But it's not saying that necessarily. Okay? What it's really telling you and I to do is to accept one whose faith is weak, but when he comes to you, okay, or you accept him, don't get into the place now that you're going to be passing judgment upon where he's at or where she's at, their opinion of things. Okay? Don't pass judgment and be like, you're wrong for this, you're wrong for that, whatever the case is, you got to do this, whatever. That's not the situation. Okay? Moshe went down and dealt with the children of Israel based upon where they were at. And Shaul did the very same thing to the Gentiles. But he accepted them. He accepted them. Because they wanted to move in a certain direction, and based upon them believing, they would come around later on. The time would come. Even if they didn't do it in a certain generation, it would take place over a great deal of time. It doesn't all have to happen in this lifetime. So here goes now in verse 2. This is how you're going to know that it's saying something different. For one who believes that he may eat all things, another who is weak eats only vegetables. Because this is what it's talking about, that individual, what they're believing. Okay? So one may believe that he could eat everything. Another one may believe that he's only supposed to eat only vegetables. That's where he's at. It says, do not let him who eats be despiteful of him who does not eat. And do not let him who does not eat all things condemn him who eats. For Yahweh has accepted the one who eats. Because based upon the fact that that individual believes into what Yahweh is saying, or what is being put before him or her right now, based upon what the Apostle Shaul is saying, okay? And Shaul is saying, hey, you don't have to get everybody to come to where you are right now. That's not the deal. They will come around as you show them the word of Yahweh, they will come around. And when it says eat all things, it's not talking about eating every single thing that there is. It may be more on the level that some things that, well, you could eat what Yahweh says to eat, and the other one says you should only eat vegetables, because you have folks who are like that right now. Okay? And the one who don't eat meat, or whatever the case is, they only eat vegetables, they may be feeling contemptuous to the one who eats meat. But Yahweh has pretty much accepted both of them, and there should not be anything there. Because if you come to Yahweh, you're going to sooner to find out that Yahweh says, okay, don't eat the pig anyway. Okay? Or the aardvark, or you're going to eat those guys, you're going to find out. So it's not saying eat anything that there is. It's talking about eating those things that is prescribed. Now, if you want to come to a higher level of consciousness, and you have a certain soul, and that soul moves you your soul moves you to only have vegetables, well, that is fine. But because we come to that point now, don't condemn the guy who still eats a burger sandwich. There's nothing to go there. Yes, he's going to eat a lot of meat, and if he eats a lot of meat, yeah, his body may be a little more acidic than yours, and he may clog off certain things, frequencies that he doesn't receive. Whereas the individual who's just doing vegetables, he may come to a certain point, but he's also got to give something up for that because he's going to be weak and small in stature. Now, based upon what Yahweh gives an individual in faith, that makes up for everything. Because the individual who only does vegetables is accepted, and the individual who likes to eat a lot of meat, Yahweh is saying that he's accepted. And we ain't got to make a quarrel about this. But they believe in two different things. Two different things. They have a belief system on two different things. But the core of what they're believing unto is what Yahweh is going to be accepting. Now let's go to 2 Thessalonians. Okay? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. So we always got to be careful of what we're allowing ourselves to believe now. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, let's look at verse 9. Let's go to verse 9. Because we can believe a lot of things. It says, let's go to verse 8. It says, and then that lawless one will be revealed, whom Yahshua will remove with the breath of his mouth, and made powerless with the appearance of his coming. Whose coming, now this is the spirit that Yahshua sends, and this is the Messiah spirit that also comes. Now, whose coming is according to the energy of Satan, who works with all power and signs and lying wonders. These are deceptive signs that got people wondering after it now. But it's going to cause people to believe. People are going to believe that because it's human generated. If it was Yahweh generated, you would never believe something that's wrong. In verse 10 now it says, and with all deceivableness of errant behavior, or going the wrong way, sin, it says here, in those who are perishing. Now, those who are perishing is not talking about individuals who are dying physically. That's not what it's talking about. The individuals who are perishing are the individuals who's walking away from that which Yahweh has set in order. These are the ones who are perishing. If it was talking about physical perishing, you have no place to go, because just about all the prophets perished. Yahshua perished. Okay? The apostles, just about every last one of them perished. So he's not talking about that kind of perishing. It's talking about perishing in the sense that there is redemption of moving out, going back to where you came from, and there is a sense of perishing, either remaining in this whole stuff or moving even further down, okay, losing even more and more consciousness. So now the deceivableness of sin is in those who are perishing. Notice why they're perishing: because they did not receive the love of the truth. They weren't receptive to the truth. In other words, they did not believe. So you could believe under something else. Okay, they didn't accept the love of the truth. Notice now what it does? That they might be saved by it. Only Yahweh have the power to save you, and He puts that within the individual. You're not going to save yourself. So notice now, when they do whatever, here goes, there's a power that an individual receives that actually gives them the power to be redeemed. But they got to believe something. They could believe unto something that's not the truth, or they could believe unto the truth. If they believe unto the truth, now they're going to start, their conduct is going to be moving in a certain area, and as it does, they're going to receive power that is able to save them. In verse 11 here now. And for this reason, because they didn't want to believe the truth that Yahweh gave, the Pharisees and the Sadducees during Yahshua's time, they didn't want to believe it either, the works that He did. They didn't want to hold on to that either. So for this reason, it says, Yahweh will send them strong delusions. Why? That they may believe something other than that which will direct them onto their redemptive powers. So that they would believe the deception. In other words, they are not going to come on to being redeemed if they're believing something else. So believing is very, very important. But it's self-generated. You could believe anything you choose to believe. Now, so now, notice now, if they had believed in what Yahweh had said to believe, strong delusions wouldn't come. But that's what takes place when whatever Yahweh is saying we should do, we see it, but we do something else. Strong delusions come that we will even go out and try to kill Yahshua. Because that's what they did. They did not believe the works that He did. They got jealous because they wouldn't accept it. So strong delusions came upon them, and they moved to kill Him. In verse 12 now. In order that all those may be judged as not having believed the truth, or believed unto that which would assist them in receiving redemptive power, but as having delighted in the ways of this world. They call it sin. I'm going to go over to one more scriptures showing you that you could believe a whole bunch of stuff. You and I, we could go all over the place with all these things here. Now let's go to John chapter, 1 John chapter 1. Chapter 4, verse 1. Chapter 4, verse 1. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. Notice what it says here. This is a kicker, guys. This is a kicker. Beloved, do not believe every spirit. A lot of spirit comes to you. You have to test them. Not everyone who comes to you to say go here or there or do this or that is actually trying to get you to harness your redemptive powers. That comes only from Yahweh. But you got to believe it. You have to believe unto Yahweh. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits. Test the minds of the individuals who are coming to you. Test the minds. See if they are about doing what your Father says, or they're about doing what they want, and they're all stuck in the things of the world. These are minds. These are spirits. Okay? To see if they're of Yahweh, because these spirits have gone into the world here now, and they're all in false prophets, or they're all in people who think more highly of themselves than they ought to, or people who are chasing after a whole bunch of things, but they're chasing after everything, but they refuse to come to the truth. And they have gone out into the world, and they're telling a whole bunch of people how they should live. This is going to get you to do this. This is going to get you to do that. And then you're you're going to have the powers that's already in you come out and all kind of stuff. Self-enhancement, self-empowerment, all without knowing that something else, you and I need to connect to something else. Okay. In verse 2. But by this you will know the Spirit of Yahweh. Every spirit that confesses that Yahshua, Messiah, started in the flesh is of Yahweh. Well, I didn't necessarily want to go there, but I want to go to one more scripture, Hebrews 11, and we're going to look at verse 6. Okay. So a person believing is vital. This is vital. In your scriptures now, in chapter 11 and verse 6 of Hebrews, okay, it says here, for without faith, this is not believing, because we just got to looking that believing, you go believe all different ways. So it's not talking about believing. Okay? Without faith, it is impossible to please Yahweh. But in this faith, you have to believe also. You have to believe. And then you have to do those things that are pleasing. Or do what he says, because those are the things that's acceptable to him. So here he goes now, it says, for without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Yahweh, who wants to go into the presence of Yahweh, must believe. There's a belief is there. The individual has to believe. Has to believe that he lives, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, or in other words, do those who are of the code of conduct. Because that's what you're going to do with that code of conduct. You're going to seek him, and as you're seeking him, you're going to do those things that you see that's telling you that Yahweh is going to work in your life and give you certain things, or you're going to get closer to Yahweh. You're going to do those things that your scripture or whatever is telling you this is the way to go, so this is how it's going to happen. This is all part of seeking him. So it's impossible to please the power that is in you already, because Yahweh is in you. It's impossible to have that come out and be emanated every day around everyone. It's impossible to do that unless we believe. But we have to believe unto Yahweh. We have to believe unto Yahweh. We can't just believe every spirit, because Yahweh is spirit too. So we can't just believe anything. We have to believe those things that Yahweh has put before us. And when we believe that, then we start directing our lives according to the code of conduct. And as you are doing those things, there are different measures of faith now that He's going to give you. Different measures of faith. Everyone doesn't necessarily get the same thing. The individual who is just believing that Yahshua could do something, they are receiving a measure of faith. That's why Yahshua is able to say, your faith has made you whole. They probably can't go and pray for someone now because their righteousness is not where the righteous man's prayer that prevails is at. They're not there. That's another level of faith. But the individual who Yahshua is healing, who didn't have the power to do certain things for themselves, but had to connect with something else, that individual also has a measure of faith. As well as Yahshua, who had a greater measure of faith. And it all comes down and starts with how or what they are believing into.